Welcome to Paranormal Pages. Please drop a like or comment if you want to help the channel. Now let's get into the true scary stories. The Whisper in the Dark. I've always had trouble sleeping. Not the kind of insomnia that keeps you awake all night, but the kind that makes the minutes after midnight stretch into uneasy hours. It's what led me to download that stupid sleep app in the first place. It was supposed to record snoring patterns and analyze the quality of my rest. Simple, harmless tech, I thought. It would help me understand why I woke up exhausted, even after a solid 8 hours. But what it recorded that night was far from harmless. That night, the bedroom felt colder than usual. The air had an odd heaviness to it, as if the shadows themselves carried weight. I blamed it on a passing storm that had rolled in hours earlier, its thunder long gone but leaving the world damp and suffocating. I turned on the app, propped my phone on the nightstand, and settled in. I didn't even dream, just a black, empty sleep. When I woke, the sky outside was pale with dawn, the room was dead silent, and I felt the same restless exhaustion as always. But the app? The app had something new to tell me. As I scrolled through the timeline, I noticed an odd spike at around 3:12 a.m., well after I had fallen asleep. My first thought was maybe it caught some ambient noise, the wind, a passing car. But then I tapped play. A low hum filled the speakers. I listened intently, the sound of my own breathing a steady rhythm in the background. Then, out of the hum, came a voice. Soft. Whispering. My pulse quickened, the voice clearer than any background noise should be. It wasn't my voice, it wasn't even close. "He's asleep now," it said. I paused the recording, my heart hammering in my chest. I stared at the phone, replaying the moment over and over, trying to rationalize it. Maybe I imagined it, maybe it was some random interference. But no, there it was, unmistakable, as if someone had been standing beside my bed. I spent the next half hour trying to make sense of it, rewinding and replaying, my mind grasping at straws. I was alone in my apartment that night. No one had come in, no windows were open. I hadn't turned the TV on for hours. And still, that voice, clear as day, spoke again each time I pressed play. "He's asleep now." The rest of the day was a blur. I couldn't focus at work, couldn't shake the sound of that voice. My colleagues noticed I was distant, but I waved them off, blaming a bad night of sleep. That was the truth, after all. But I didn't tell them about the recording. Who would believe it? As far as anyone knew, I lived alone. The sun set too soon that evening. I felt a rising sense of dread as I walked back to my apartment, the once familiar route now filled with creeping shadows and the sensation that something, or someone, was watching me. I reached my door, keys trembling in my hand, and hesitated before stepping inside. The air inside was still. Quiet. My heart sank into a slow, fearful rhythm as I scanned the room. Everything was just as I had left it, too perfect, too still. It felt staged, like a scene waiting for something terrible to happen. That night, I decided to test the app again. I wanted to believe the voice had been a glitch, some kind of strange interference. But a part of me knew better. I set my phone on the nightstand, dimmed the lights, and crawled into bed, my pulse racing. As I lay there in the dark, the silence was oppressive, a thick void that made my ears ring. I wanted to hear something, anything, to break the stillness. Eventually, sleep claimed me, but it was far from restful. My dreams were fragmented, flashes of dark hallways, flickering lights, and faces, half-formed, watching me from the edges of my vision. I woke in a cold sweat sometime after midnight, my breath ragged. The room felt suffocating again, that same heaviness pressing down on me. I grabbed my phone, hands shaking, and opened the app. Another spike, this time at 2:45 a.m. I pressed play. At first, it was nothing but static, the faint hum of the room. Then I heard it again, footsteps. Slow, deliberate. The sound of someone moving across the wooden floor, right outside my bedroom door. The footsteps grew louder, closer, until they stopped just at the threshold of my room. My breath caught in my throat. There was no creak of the door, no shift in the air. Just silence. And then, the voice again. "He's asleep now." I bolted upright, my heart pounding. It was the same voice, But this time there was something different about it, something darker, more menacing. I quickly scanned the room, expecting to see someone standing in the shadows, watching me. But there was nothing. No one. Just that voice, echoing in my head. I couldn't stay in that room anymore. I grabbed my keys and rushed out of the apartment, not caring where I was going as long as it was away from that voice. My footsteps echoed in the empty stairwell as I bolted down to the street. I didn't stop until I reached my car, my hands shaking so violently I could barely get the door open. I sat there, gripping the steering wheel, my mind racing. What was happening? Was I losing it? Or was something in my apartment, something I couldn't see? I didn't go back to the apartment that night. Instead, I drove aimlessly for hours, the streets of the city empty and ghostly in the early morning hours. My mind raced with questions I didn't want to answer, each thought darker than the last. By the time the sun began to rise, I parked in front of a 24-hour diner. The thought of going home made my skin crawl. I sat in the diner for hours, nursing a coffee I didn't drink, watching the door as if expecting someone, or something, to come for me. The voice kept playing in my head, over and over again. He's asleep now. The way it was said, like someone observing me, waiting for something. It wasn't a simple recording. It wasn't a glitch. Something was in my home, something unseen. But what? A spirit? A demon? The questions made me feel ridiculous, but after hearing that voice, twice, I couldn't brush it off. Later that morning, I decided to visit a friend, Greg. He'd always been into the supernatural, the weird stuff most people laugh at. Normally, I would have too. But now, I needed answers. I arrived at his place and knocked. His smile faded the moment he saw my face. "Dude, what's going on?" he asked, ushering me inside. I told him everything, the app, the recording, the voice, the footsteps. He listened without interrupting, his expression growing more serious with every word. When I finished, he didn't laugh. Instead, he leaned back, eyes narrowing. "Have you ever experienced anything like this before? Strange dreams, weird events?" "No," I said, my voice shaky. "Nothing like this." Greg sighed, rubbing his temples. "Look, man, I don't want to freak you out more, but it sounds like something's attached to you. You ever heard of sleep demons?" The term sent a chill down my spine. Sleep demons? Yeah, they're supposed to feed off your fear. They lurk when you're vulnerable, when you're asleep. I know it sounds insane, but if this thing's watching you sleep, it's not just messing with your head. It wants something. My stomach twisted. What does it want? Greg hesitated, glancing around as if someone might be listening. "I don't know. But you need to get out of your apartment. If it's attached to you, it could follow you anywhere, but it sounds like it's using your place to grow stronger." That night, I couldn't bear the thought of going back. But I also knew I had to. I couldn't leave all my things there, and besides, if something had attached to me, there was no escape. Greg gave me some sage and a cheap protection charm, but neither brought me much comfort. With a deep breath, I returned home, stepping into the apartment like a prisoner entering a cell. The air felt even heavier, denser, as if it was waiting for me. I lit the sage and walked through every room, muttering the half-remembered phrases Greg had told me to say. I felt like an idiot, waving smoke around my own apartment. But somewhere deep inside, I hoped it would work. That I'd wake up, and this nightmare would be over. When night came, I forced myself to turn on the app again. I needed to know. I needed to hear it. With the phone propped beside me, I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling for what felt like hours. My body was exhausted, but fear kept my mind sharp, my senses on edge. Finally, sleep overtook me, but not peacefully. In the middle of the night, I woke with a start. The room was freezing, far colder than before. I fumbled for my phone, my fingers stiff with fear. As soon as I unlocked it, I saw the notification, a new recording at 3:10 a.m. The timestamp sent chills through me, but my hand moved on its own, tapping the play button. This time, I didn't hear footsteps. Instead, the recording started with breathing, heavy, deliberate, as if someone was standing right over me. And then the voice, clearer than ever before, He's awake now. I dropped the phone, my heart racing like it was trying to escape my chest. He's awake now. The words echoed in my head, louder, clearer, more sinister than ever. This thing, it wasn't just watching me anymore. It knew I was aware of it. My whole body felt frozen, paralyzed by fear as if the air itself had become solid, pressing down on me. I scrambled out of bed, my legs shaky, every instinct telling me to run, but where would I go? The apartment felt wrong, twisted, as though the walls themselves were warping in the dark. Shadows stretched unnaturally across the room, and the feeling that I wasn't alone, no, that I was being hunted, grew unbearable. I grabbed my phone, flicking the flashlight on. The beam cut through the darkness, illuminating only empty space, but I knew it was there, hiding just beyond the reach of the light. I could feel its presence, its hunger. With shaking hands, I pressed play on the recording again, hoping, praying that I'd imagined it. But no, there it was, the breathing, the whispered words. He's awake now. Suddenly, the door to my bedroom creaked open. My breath hitched in my throat, eyes wide as I focused on the doorway. There, just beyond the light, I could see a faint silhouette, a figure standing in the hall. It wasn't fully formed, more like a smudge in the air, a mass of darkness that seemed to absorb the light around it. I backed away slowly, gripping the phone as if it could somehow protect me. "Who are you?" I whispered, my voice barely audible over the pounding in my ears. The figure didn't answer. Instead, it started moving, gliding soundlessly across the floor toward me, its shape growing sharper, more distinct. It wasn't human. The figure twisted and contorted unnaturally, as if its very existence was a mistake, something that shouldn't be. Panicking, I stumbled backward, crashing into the nightstand. The lamp fell, shattering the silence with a loud crack. But the thing didn't stop, it was getting closer, closer. Its voice, that voice, filled the room, surrounding me, suffocating me. He's awake now. It was right in front of me. Cold, black hands reached out, fingers impossibly long, curling toward me. I screamed, my voice breaking as I tried to fight, to run, but the darkness wrapped around me, pulling me under, consuming me. My mind felt like it was being ripped apart, my thoughts scattering like leaves in a storm. In that moment, as the thing closed in, I realized something horrifying. I wasn't dreaming. I never had been. This was real, and it had been watching me for days, waiting for this exact moment. It wasn't satisfied with just watching me sleep anymore. It wanted something more. The last thing I heard before the world went black was the voice, whispering in my ear, "He'll never wake again." When the police found my apartment days later, the place was exactly as I'd left it. The bed was neatly made, the phone still resting on the nightstand, recording nothing but silence. No one ever heard from me again. Hey! Subscribe for more true scary stories. Story 2. The Flickering Star. The night it all began was like any other. At least, I thought so. Sitting on my porch, staring up at the sky, I noticed something peculiar, a new star, bright and distant. My eyes locked onto it, captivated by the way it flickered, almost like it was trying to communicate. At first, I brushed it off as nothing more than an illusion, the way some stars twinkle as their light passes through the Earth's atmosphere. But this was different. It was rhythmic, deliberate. A pulse, like the beating of a heart. I leaned forward, curiosity gnawing at me, the chill of the evening biting my skin. It wasn't long before I realized the star wasn't just flickering randomly. There was a pattern, something familiar, yet unsettling. I grabbed my phone and opened a Morse code app, an old hobby of mine from my scouting days. Slowly, I began to decode the star's blinking message. What I discovered sent a shiver down my spine. My hands trembled as the dots and dashes came together into letters, my name. Over and over again, it spelled out my full name, Daniel Keller. I felt the blood drain from my face, my heart pounding in my ears as I stared up at the star. Was this some cosmic coincidence? No, it couldn't be. The thought of the infinite sky somehow knowing me, reaching out to me in such a deliberate way, sent waves of fear through me. I scrambled inside, locking the door behind me, hoping to shake the feeling. My mind raced with irrational explanations, trying to comfort myself. Perhaps it was a mistake, maybe some kind of satellite interference. But the more I thought about it, the more I knew deep down that this was something else. Something far beyond my understanding. The next few nights, I avoided looking at the sky, afraid of what I might see. Yet, that gnawing curiosity kept pulling me back. It was on the fifth night, when I finally gave in, that things escalated. The star was still there, waiting for me, flickering away. But this time, the message was different. It still spelled my name, but now it was followed by a phrase that froze the blood in my veins: "Come to me." I bolted upright, heart racing as I paced the living room, trying to make sense of it all. That night, I barely slept, my mind filled with images of the star, its message burning behind my eyelids. When I finally drifted off, my dreams were filled with strange, shadowy figures and whispers in a language I couldn't understand. They circled me, closing in, their fingers long and clawed, their eyes gleaming with an unnatural hunger. I woke with a start, drenched in sweat, my breath coming in short gasps. There was no escaping it now. Whatever was calling to me wasn't just in the sky. It was in my mind, in my dreams, drawing me closer, and I had no idea why. I spent the next few days trying to block it all out. I stayed indoors, refusing to look at the night sky, keeping my curtains tightly shut. But there was no shaking the feeling that something was watching me, waiting for me. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the flickering star and those words, "Come to me." The strange dreams returned each night, always the same: shadows, voices, and clawed hands reaching for me from the dark. I began to hear things, too, soft whispers in the corners of my house. At first, I thought it was just my nerves, the creaks and groans of an old house settling. But then the whispers grew louder. They started as unintelligible murmurs but soon became clearer, more insistent. They echoed my name, Daniel, over and over, like a chant. By the third night, I was no longer sleeping. How could I, when the whispers followed me even into my waking hours? On the fourth night, I couldn't take it anymore. Exhausted and desperate, I found myself standing by the window, staring out into the darkness. My eyes drifted upward, despite every instinct screaming not to look. And there it was, the star, flickering madly now, more erratic than ever. The pattern was fast, frantic, but still I could make out the message. It was no longer just a request. "Come to me," it demanded. And then, a chilling new phrase: "You are mine." I stumbled back from the window, my heart racing. That was when I heard the knock at the door. It was soft, barely audible, but in the silence of my empty house, it echoed like a gunshot. I froze, every muscle in my body tensing. No one ever knocked on my door this late. Who could it be? I moved to the door slowly, my hand trembling as I reached for the knob. Before I could open it, the door creaked on its own, swinging inward with a slow, ominous groan. My breath caught in my throat. There, standing in the doorway, was a figure. Cloaked in shadows, their face obscured by the dim light of the hallway. But I could see enough. Their eyes, those same eyes from my dreams, gleamed with an unnatural, predatory light. "Daniel," the figure whispered in a voice that sent ice through my veins. "You've been chosen." I stumbled back, my legs giving way beneath me as I hit the floor. The figure didn't move. It simply stood there, like a shadow carved out of the night itself. "Chosen for what?" I managed to choke out, my voice barely a whisper. I could feel the darkness pressing in around me, thick and suffocating. The figure took a step forward, its movement slow and deliberate. "You already know," it said softly, with a chilling calm. "You've seen it. You've felt it. The star is merely the beginning. It's time for you to embrace your fate." I shook my head, panic rising in my chest. "No, I don't understand. What do you want from me?" My voice cracked, desperation clear in every word. But deep down, I already knew the answer. This thing, whatever it was, had been calling me for days. And now it was here, standing in my doorway, waiting for me to make a choice. The figure took another step, the shadows around it growing darker, more oppressive. "Come with me, Daniel," it whispered, its voice like the wind through dead leaves. "The star awaits." I don't know what possessed me to get up. Fear, perhaps, or something darker, some tug deep inside me that I didn't understand. My legs moved without my consent, weak but determined. The figure in the doorway didn't beckon or call again. It just waited, like it knew I couldn't resist. My heartbeat pounded in my ears, but I took a step forward, then another. The air in the room grew thick, suffocating, as if the shadows themselves were watching, pressing closer with each step I took. The figure's eyes glowed brighter, like two dying embers flickering in the dark. "Good," it whispered, the words slithering from its lips like something alive. "You're ready." I wasn't ready for any of this, but my body kept moving forward. I reached the doorway, barely a foot away from the figure. The air around it pulsed with something, some invisible force pulling at my chest, drawing me nearer. Its eyes never left mine. There was no expression, no malice, but there was intent. Purpose. This thing had been waiting for me, and now it was time. "You've always belonged to us," the figure whispered, the voice soft, but the words striking me like a blow. "The star has been watching you since the day you were born." I swallowed hard, trying to process what it was saying. "Us?" My voice was barely a rasp. I wanted answers, needed them, but every part of me screamed to run, to fight. Yet, I remained frozen, bound by the weight of its presence. The figure tilted its head ever so slightly, as though amused by my confusion. "We are many, Daniel. I am simply one of the watchers." It gestured toward the sky, its long fingers tracing an arc above my head. "That star. It's not what you think. It is a gate, a threshold between this world and the others. And it has chosen you." My legs gave out then. I stumbled back into the wall, the reality of what it was saying crashing down on me. "A gate? Chosen for what?" I stammered, my voice shaking with fear. But the answer came not in words, but in a vision, a memory, perhaps, or a nightmare. My mind was suddenly flooded with images, stars flickering in an endless void, great hulking shadows moving in the darkness between them, their forms twisted and monstrous. And then, the gate, the star I had been staring at for days, was a gaping maw, a vortex pulling everything into its depths. I snapped back to the present, gasping for breath, my heart thundering in my chest. The figure watched me calmly, as if it had just shown me something inevitable. "They've waited long enough," it said, stepping closer. I could feel the air grow colder as it approached. "The gate is opening. You will be the one to guide them through." "No!" I shouted, finally finding some strength to resist. "I'm not a part of this. I didn't ask for this." My voice was raw with terror, my mind scrambling for any way out. But the figure only smiled, a thin, hollow smile that made my skin crawl. "You were never asked, Daniel," it said, the voice turning darker, deeper. "You were born to this fate. The star chose you before you even knew how to look up." My heart hammered in my chest as I realized the truth. This thing, these watchers, had been waiting for me all my life. The flickering star, the dreams, the whispers, they had all been leading to this moment. But what terrified me most wasn't that they had chosen me. It was the growing realization that some part of me had always known. The figure extended a hand, its fingers long and cold like the night itself. "It's time," it whispered, the finality in its voice like a death knell. "Come to the gate." I tried to pull away, but my body betrayed me again, moving forward toward the outstretched hand. My mind screamed, fought against the invisible pull dragging me toward my doom. But it was no use. The door to my house creaked open wider, and outside, the star burned brighter than ever before, its light blinding. And then, everything went dark. I awoke to the sound of wind howling, sharp and relentless, like it was tearing through an empty, forgotten world. My eyes fluttered open, and I found myself lying on the ground, not the familiar floor of my home, but something cold and unearthly. It was stone, slick with moisture, and stretched out into an endless, jagged landscape. The air was heavy with a bitter chill, but there was no sky above me, only blackness, vast and suffocating. The star was gone, yet I could still feel its presence, humming in the distance, like a vibration in my bones. I pushed myself to my feet, my legs trembling beneath me. The figure was there, standing ahead on a path that seemed carved from the rock itself. Its shadowy form was no longer veiled in the same mysterious darkness. Now, it appeared taller, more defined, and yet, Wrong. As if it were something attempting to look human but failing, its limbs too long, its proportions all twisted. Where am I? My voice barely broke the silence. The figure turned slowly, its glowing eyes fixing on me with an eerie calm. You are in the threshold, it said, its voice resonating with an ancient, echoing timbre that seemed to vibrate through the very ground beneath me. The place between your world and ours. The place where the gate opens. I tried to steady my breathing, the enormity of what I was hearing suffocating me. My mouth was dry, my heart a pounding drum in my chest. Why me? I managed to ask, my voice raw and desperate. Why did why did you, choose me? The figure's expression never changed, its smile still hollow, as though it couldn't quite understand the depth of my fear. You are the gatekeeper, it said simply, as though that explained everything. The star has marked you. You will open the way for them to come through. I took a step back, my hands shaking. For them? My eyes darted to the vast darkness surrounding us, an overwhelming sense of dread filling every inch of my body. There was something out there, waiting, watching. I could feel it. I won't do it. I won't let them through. My voice rose, a flare of panic lighting in my chest. The figure tilted its head, those glowing eyes narrowing ever so slightly. You have no choice. You were born to this. You were chosen before you even knew your name. Its voice deepened, growing more distorted, like a chorus of many voices speaking as one. You are the key, Daniel. And the gate is hungry. I felt something stir in the darkness. A sound, low and rumbling, like the earth itself groaning beneath the weight of something terrible. My heart raced as the shadows around us began to shift, writhing and twisting. Figures, hulking, unnatural forms, moved within the blackness, their outlines monstrous and grotesque. Their eyes, hundreds of them, blinked open all at once, glowing with the same eerie light as the star that had called me here. No, I whispered, stepping back again, my entire body shaking. I won't do it. You can't make me. The figure remained still, its eyes never leaving mine. The gate opens with or without your consent, Daniel. You've already begun the process by coming here. It raised its hand slowly, pointing toward the horizon, or what should have been the horizon. There, at the edge of the void, a tear in the darkness began to form, a pulsing, jagged wound in reality itself. The light spilling from it was sickly, unnatural, like the glow of something decayed. As I stared, paralyzed with horror, the figures in the darkness began to move toward the tear, their grotesque forms lumbering forward. They reached out with twisted hands, their eyes locked on me with a hunger that defied description. The gate was opening, and they were coming through. I turned to run, but the ground beneath me shifted like quicksand, pulling me toward the tear in the fabric of reality. My feet slipped, and I fell, my hands scraping against the slick stone as I clawed to get away. But it was no use. The pull was too strong, and the darkness around me began to close in, wrapping itself around my limbs like icy chains. Welcome home, gatekeeper, the figure whispered, its voice now 1,000 voices, its eyes burning brighter as the gate opened wide. The last thing I saw was the star, blazing overhead in that black, starless sky, pulsing faster and faster. And then, I was gone. The end. Subscribe for more true scary stories. Thanks for watching.